the Agologist, Agah Bahari. Did I say both of those things?
Oh,
correctly?
yeah. Very nice.
Cool. Okay, I did my research. So you seem like an interesting man. I really don't know. I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't know how I came across your videos. I was actually thinking about that, like probably about an hour before this. I was like, how do I know this guy? And I was trying to think about it. I'm like, I really don't know how I know, how I came across your podcast. Yeah, exactly. The almighty algorithm led me to you. And you've had some interesting people on there. Like I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched every single podcast, but you've had Michio Kaku, John McAfee, and who's the latest guy that you had on? I forget his name right now.
Rizwan Virk.
I think it was somebody else. I forget who it was, but I watched the whole podcast and I was like, wow, this is really good. And I like how at the end of every podcast you ask people 2 questions, right?
One question. About alien?
I thought, the one that I listened to was, at the end, it was, what's humanity's greatest achievement and what is their least greatest achievement or something like that?
Yeah, the best and worst of humanity. If you're having a interaction with a intelligent alien from a different civilization.
So how would you answer that question?
Well, I've evolved a lot. I was actually thinking about dropping that question because if there is a higher level consciousness in contact with us, the duality of good and bad has been already solved for that species to be able to achieve that higher level. So I liked it specifically, I think, both 2 last episodes of the podcast, which is called Neohuman Podcast. They both answered in the way that the same thing applied to the good and the bad. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly where I'm, right now, perspective-wise as well. But it's really interesting how people respond to it. Like John McAfee was like, I'm not going to tell him anything. I give him this information. It's really interesting. And Peter Boghossian, who's a philosopher, he said, well, how do I know the alien is conscious? Which is a really good question about, any kind of an interaction. Like, how do I know that you're conscious? It could be a simulation.
Yeah, exactly. How do you know something is conscious? That's a very good question. I don't know.
Well, we are addressing it right now with artificial intelligence. And we have a test called the Turing test, which is, let's say, I'm text chatting with a human and a machine. And when I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, that which one is a machine, which one is a human, that is when machine has passed the Turing test. Oh, now he came up with it in the 50s, I believe, like late 40s, 50s. But we're at the point that we have to come up with something to determine whether or not the machine is conscious, because that's where we're headed. And it's not a trend, it's not a phase, it's not just a cool name to talk about artificial intelligence, AI. It's already everywhere, and it's just going to expand. And it's forcing us to delve really deep and understand what is the purpose of humanity, who we are, what is the meaning of life, and all those things that we have taken for granted for so many years because life has been so easy and so good.
Yeah. Do you know the app Philosopher AI?
No, but is it like an AI that you can chat with?
Yes, it's like an omnipotent AI where you can go on and ask any question you want, and it gives you these very, very elaborate answers that I think sometimes I'm like, there has to be somebody behind the keyboard that gives this answer. And it's run by this, I don't know how it works. I'm not even going to try to explain like I know how it works. It's run by this code called GPT-3 or something like that.
Yes, OpenAI.
And it's it's this self-learning algorithm that it draws on billions or trillions of information of like I don't know. I'm not going to try to butcher it, but you would think it was a human being behind the keyboard. I highly encourage you and anybody watching this to go to philosopherai.com, and you can ask it anything. Like I've asked it like very, very existential, introspective questions, and it gives me like these answers that you think some Buddhist monk would give you that has been meditating in a cave for like 5 years. It's insane, man.
Well, some of the input data is probably from Buddhist monks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
it's crazy.
That is actually not a generative machine. I know that algorithm is driving everybody crazy. It's so precise. But what has happened is the process behind it is called machine learning.
Yeah.
That you feed data and it learns basically on its own, and it's evolved so quickly because technology evolves exponentially. We are evolving linearly. That's why it feels like we're falling behind, but we've evolved together with technology. But the AI, you know, at some point, have you seen the movie Her?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So at one point, the AI started having a conversation with another AI, which is a reincarnation of Alan Watts.
Wait, that's in the movie?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I only saw about like just a little bit of it. I didn't know it got to Alan Watts. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really and very precise because there is enough data already, you know, in many different forms of Alan Watts for a machine to make sense out of Alan Watts' way of thinking.
Wow.
Right? So we're at that point right now. But at some point, we will get to a point that a machine will have, well, we don't know what it will have. Would it have a sense of self? Would it have existential questions about the nature of itself? Yeah. Or would it be, we just don't know, right? But we are headed towards that direction because there are already autonomous jet planes that Pentagon uses. There are autonomous defense mechanisms. It always starts from military, right?
Yep.
And yeah, it's forcing us to really address these very fundamental questions that we have never addressed in a fundamental and meaningful kind of a way. We've relied on other people describing this illusion of control and certainty, and we just went along with it because we cared about more important things like just surviving and finding food for most of our history.
Yeah.
And then we got very, very comfortable because of technology. But what we haven't realized is that we are feeding technology towards its own path of evolution.
Yeah.
Which is exponential. You know, Marshall McLuhan had a quote, this is in the 60s, saying that the man becomes the sex organs of the machine world, that you just help them basically reproduce themselves. And this is exactly where we are.
Yeah.
So interesting times.
It's an insane concept that it's almost like machines are using us to create themselves out of our like limbic brain, out of our just our need to survive and reproduce and just be a human being. Through that, we create these things and these elaborate machines that we have to debate if they're conscious or not. It's pretty insane. What would you say? Go ahead.
It's important to realize that the perspective that it's humanity and then there's technology as two separate entities, it's shared, but it's not a final kind of a status quo, because I, for example, believe that we've evolved together and because of each other.
Yeah. And
I think nothing has portrayed this better than 2001: A Space Odyssey, the beginning of it, that monkey finds a bone. What is the bone? The bone is a technology. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, it learns how to use it. It, surprises him, make him feel empowered. And then he uses it to kill for his tribe and his family. But the second thing he does is protecting the water source against other monkeys, which is the same species, just a different tribe. Right. And then he throw up the bone and it turns into a space shuttle. That movie is so amazing, especially if you're watching it and like some kind of a psychedelics.
Yeah.
Very, very.
I've never seen it, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I've heard great things. I definitely have to watch that. I have to grab some psychedelic mushrooms and watch the Space Odyssey.
Yeah. I think we've evolved together and in juxtaposition to each other, and other people watched the tribe with better technology and improved upon that technology to beat that tribe down. But, we've been really evolving together, us and our technology.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's more of like, it's less so of a different organism, as it's just like an extension of humanity. When do you think it so we were talking before, like what is conscious to you? Like what point do you think something becomes conscious? Like other than, like, what would you say? Like not the Turing test where you can't Like, if you could put it simply, what makes something conscious? Is it aware that it's alive or aware that it's experiencing something?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it really goes back to whether or not we even know how to define consciousness, right? Because consciousness to me is one of those terms like love and God, and we use them, but we don't really know what they mean.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing, because it means that the real meaning of it is beyond words and beyond our mode of communication. But it takes humility to get to that point and be comfortable with it, that, hey, I have no fucking clue. I'm sorry. Can I swear? Sometimes.
Of course. You can say whatever you want, man.
To say, I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. I had this conversation with someone a couple nights ago who's a guru to many people. And I was like, dude, it's this sense of certainty that is keeping everybody from getting to where they really can be. Because I think we are all expressions of the same thing, everything and everyone, literally. And we're having different experiences. And collective of those experiences is what you may call God.
Yep.
And, like, it is by design unknowable, and there's nothing wrong with it, because you can have the best experience by being yourself. It's exactly. So amazing.
Exactly. You just summed up like Eastern philosophy right there, man. It's a beautiful concept. It is. The only thing that we can truly know, like the ultimate truth, is that we'll never know. Like, you can't put it into words. You can't fathom it with your mind. And like you said, the consciousness, God, and love, those are all synonymous. It's the same. To me, those are all the same concepts. Like, not love as in, like, that's what all of those words are thrown around so much, and they have different meanings. But to me, when it comes down to it, like you said, we'll never really be able to describe it. It's just something that you just kind of, you feel, and you just exist. We are love. We are consciousness itself. Exactly, man.
Yeah, we're like different waves that emerges from the same ocean.
Yes, exactly. The different ripples in the same ocean.
Just as impermanent, just as unique, and at some point the question is whether or not we'll be able to quantify that uncertainty. But I don't think, and I had this conversation with James Lindsay, mathematician, and he said mathematicians have a saying that all numbers are smaller than most, because there's a certain amount of numbers that we can say and we can write down, and at some point we run out of words for them. But there are still just the same amount of numbers into infinity exist beyond them.
Yeah.
So he's an atheist, but we were talking about the concept of God, and he said sometimes one of his friends used the term infinity point to describe God.
I think that's the podcast that I watched, because I remember that, the infinity point thing.
Yeah, that's the one. I love that one, and he's a very dear guy to me. But the story that he shared on that podcast, I thought it was really interesting too, by Isaac Asimov, talking about this computer that is being asked the question, what is the purpose, what is the meaning of life? And the machine says, I need more data and more information. So it got bigger and more powerful until it took over the entire universe. And the question comes, what is the meaning of life? And the computer said, let there be light.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. I mean, yeah. Are we in the simulation? Is that, I don't know. I don't really ever fully understand what people mean by that. Like, we're in a simulation. Like, I don't think that's the correct term. I think it just means like in Hinduism, they have, and they describe, this world that we live in, and it's not, it's just it's a falsity. And I think that's kind of what the simulation means, is that, we exist in this material world, in this ever-changing and permanent world, but it's not real. It's Maya. It's the illusion. It's an illusion. The realness is just simply, like you said, just being you, just simply finding out what you are, your unique ripple in the ocean that you are, and just simply going with the flow and just going with the waves of that. Yeah.
So, I have a lot of thoughts about simulation theory, and actually the last guest on my podcast, Rizwan Work. He's a MIT computer scientist, a venture capitalist. Like, he's not a conspiracy theorist or a kook. He's as legitimate as it can get. And he has a book called The Simulation Hypothesis. And he's talking about how science and technology is coming together to describe what religions have described as something beyond our experience, and also quantum physics. And all of this can lead to the fact that we are living in a simulation. The simulation, to me, there are two different ways to look at it. One is from the perspective of human experience, and the other would be from the physics point of view. From the human experience, obviously we're in a simulation. When we are born, we are immediately branded by different kind of labels. I call them involuntary baggage that is being placed upon your shoulder when you're 1 second old. You know, in my case, I was born in Iran. Immediately, I was labeled as an Iranian Shia Muslim straight male. You know, each one of those I wanted to change throughout my life. You know, you risk everything, basically. And the culture is created around this. And then you start to operate on the basis of an operating system that you had absolutely nothing to do with contributing to its source code whatsoever.
Yeah, there's so many metaphors that you can speak of in our reality and attach them to computers. Like you said, the source code.
Yeah, so, you know, the nature of reality could be computation. That it's not out of question. You know, we don't know anything. I think that's a very good place to land on. That, hey, we're a speck in this thing that has always been, always going to be. We don't know what it is, but we're going for a ride.
Yeah.
And, you know, I go back to the question you asked, how do we know something is conscious beyond computers? Like, how do we know that the rock, for example, not the rock, a rock, having
not Dwayne Johnson.
No, not the possible future president of the United States.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah, possibly. But a rock, how do we know that a rock is not having experience of absorbing heat and then, you know, keeping it within itself and then cool down again when it's night? How do we know that a rock is not having that experience, right?
Yeah.
Like in Shintoism, they believe that there are gods in everything. They're calling them kami. So the god of a mountain, god of a tree, god of water, the millions of them.
There's people that believe this universe is conscious. Everything has consciousness. But my opinion, like I sometimes I see that, and I see how, like, you know, I go out to nature and I see how nature is its own system, and I'm like, yes, obviously it is conscious. Like, it has its own workings. Like when you actually, like, sit out in the woods and you kind of see how everything works out in the system that it is. But then I don't know if conscious is the right word, because it's not. I don't know. Sometimes I think conscious means computing, like thinking, like coming to rationalizations or coming to certain conclusions about things. And I don't think a tree can do that. It just does. It just acts. And I don't know if a tree is aware it's a tree. It doesn't have like a central nervous system, and it doesn't have like a spinal cord or anything. Like, we have that. It's definitely alive, but is it conscious? I think there's a difference in that. And I have yet to really see how a rock is conscious. Like, I don't know. Could you dive more? Do you believe rocks are consciousness? Like, do you hold this belief?
Well, again, it goes back to how you define being conscious, right? Or what is consciousness? I think everything is consciousness. I think consciousness is a fabric of existence. And so rock is an expression of consciousness. A tree is an expression of consciousness. But
I see.
A very interesting lesson to learn from both rock and a tree, among other things, is how their surroundings shape their evolution. You know, rock is a certain shape because it's been, you know, in a river for maybe like 1 million years, and then somebody threw it in the mountain, and then it stayed there for like 5 million years.
Yeah.
So what was the original shape of the rock, and does that even matter? And that's why I think it's really interesting to talk about this bigger picture but at the same time, it doesn't matter at all because you're here right now. Mm-hmm. You know, exactly. And whatever you're experiencing right now is just that. There is no, you know, most people, without being derogatory, but most people live their life without really living it.
Yeah.
Right? You always are being pulled back. Oh, all my regrets or all your hopes and dreams, however they may be, you know, and then you rationalize it by ethics and morality.
Yeah.
Which is not complete whatsoever. That's another question with respect to artificial intelligence. What exactly are we going to be aligned with this new consciousness towards? We don't have any clear answer because we haven't figured that out ourselves at all. We don't have any point of alignment.
No, that's so true. It's just like a free for all. We're all just living. Most people are living in a lost way. Like so you're saying what with our new, you know, form of consciousness being tied to technology and, you know, things like Neuralink and artificial intelligence being involved. Where's our moral compass going to lie? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we don't have a moral compass that all of the humanity is aligned towards. That's my point. Religions have tried really hard to do it.
Yeah.
And periodically they manage to do it by the use of violence. What's really interesting when you think about it, because violence in first sight, you're like, well, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But then you're like, well, keeping everybody aligned towards the same kind of an objective. And you need that to, you know, to be most productive and least wasteful, basically.
So you're saying violence is it's not good, obviously. I wouldn't say it's good, but it's useful in terms of keeping people aligned.
Well, my point is that you can interpret it in both ways, depending on the perspective that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. The reality is we have internet and microwaves and satellites and most of the comfort of modern life because of all the wars that have been fought and the military industrial complex that has to come up with these kind of technology to stay superior.
Yeah, that is very true. Like how much of our technology that we have right now comes from because the United States or some other power wanted to use that technology to destroy another civilization, or not civilization, just, you know,
or just to protect itself, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
After World War II, U.S. government basically hired some of the worst Nazis to work for the U.S. government, right? Now, you can say, well, how horrible, but at the same time, if the U.S. didn't do it, Soviet Union would have done it.
Yep.
So, you know, when you actually start thinking about this kind of thing, then you gain a certain kind of respect for people at high level of military, because the decision making is so practical that it hurts most people to even get there. Because you have to get, you know, all that matters is winning, and you're at the, you know, you're at the core of everything, because everything leads to violence. You can argue indefinitely for as long as the other side can argue. If you're coming from different perspectives, you're going to argue indefinitely. And at some point, one side decides, I'm just going to settle this with violence. And with violence. And it works every single time. That's a lot about the nature of humanity.
It is. Yeah, it's unfortunately built into us, and how the point we're at right now is you know, how many people have been killed in the history of humanity? Like, a lot of people have been murdered, and it's in the name of warfare in between nations, and in a way it's almost like that had to happen so we have our technology. And it's so weird to think about it like that. It really is. Yeah. But hopefully we can evolve past that, man. Like, do you think, like, I don't think violence, we have to move past like this inevitable violence that
we have to, you know, we are a very young species.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I often think of, sometimes I go on Twitter and just read what people are talking about. And there's no way that somebody will tell you that kind of thing to your face, but everybody can do it on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're monkeys with machine guns. That's what we are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, and I don't really care if it's good or if it's bad, because it's happening right now. You know, I know that there are monkeys with machine guns, so I'm just going to go arm myself too, but I don't necessarily need to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's the point, that you can you can realize things for how they've really evolved. Because if we created an illusion of any kind and justify it with our own sense of ethics and morality that is driven by our culture, that some random person in the other side of the world don't even recognize any of those values, for example. Mm-hmm. It's comfortable to have that illusion of certainty and control, but it's not realistic whatsoever. And so the decisions that you make will be comfortable decisions that you believe that you're doing the right thing, but they keep backfiring on you because it's not aligned with the reality of the situation.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, for example, to realize that there is no peace without being prepared to go to war. Yeah. And then you can say, well, let's just disarm. If we disarm, I'm a big advocate of the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the genius parts of the Constitution. And I always use the example of what happened in Iran leading to the revolution, that one of the final acts of the revolutionaries was to take over police stations and military bases and distribute the guns among protesters. Mm-hmm. And then when they won the revolution, one of the first acts of the victorious revolutionaries was to seize the weapons and start the executions.
Oh, okay. Wow.
To solidify their monopoly on violence.
Yeah.
I've lived that. So I understand the worth and value of a gun as an extension of your body to defend yourself and your property. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's very important to know that, because if you don't know it, there are other people in the world who are very comfortable with the idea of waging wars. It's a reality of who we are.
Yeah.
So be prepared, but don't basically fire the first shot, but be prepared to protect yourself, your loved ones, your, property, and all that is dear to you.
Yes. Yeah, I like what you said. We're just monkeys with guns. Like, we are so primitive.
Yeah, our technology is way ahead of us. Our brain, and Terence McKenna had that theory of stoned ape theory.
Yeah.
That our brain evolved much faster than the rest of our body because we started munching on psychedelics. Whether or not it's true, but that's exactly what it is, that all of this is our technology evolved on the back of the power of human brain.
Yeah. And
it's way ahead of, the rest of our systems, judiciary system, religions, governance, everything.
Yeah. And we're still, I don't know if you want to say a slave, but we're still subject to our old systems in our brain as well.
Most people want to be. That's the thing. Most people want the comfort.
Yeah. What do you mean they want to be?
They want to be comfortable. They want to have the sense of certainty. Otherwise, why would you do anything? You go through rough patches of your life believing that everything is going to be okay. Or you're doing it, for example, for your kids. Mm-hmm. You're like, if I work 3 jobs and sleep only 4 hours, but, my kid will end up fine. That will be, great. Now, that kid might end up being a serial killer. We don't know. And it's out of anybody's control. If that's the karmic path of that child, that's the karmic path of that child. Mm-hmm. But to create hope to move on, or faith to move on, for majority of people, they require a certain kind of ground to walk upon it. They cannot walk upon uncertainty. But that's the entire point, that any kind of certainty is impermanent and it's an illusion. Now, that illusion can last your entire life.
Yeah. Wow. That illusion can last your entire life. It's so true, man. Wow. Yeah, I don't even know where to go from there, man. That's so true. Like, the certainty. I had that thought the other day about like how, everyone gets lost in thinking that, that we're gonna have some politicians save the day, but at the end of the day, it's what you just mentioned. It's that, you think Trump is going to get into office, or you think Biden is going to be in office. And it's at the end of the day, you're curating that certainty. Like, if I have X amount of money or X amount of whatever, whoever's in position, it doesn't matter, because that's not real comfort. That's not real certainty. It really just comes from like the inside, because we live in an ever-changing, impermanent world where, no matter what happens on the outside, it's always going to be crazy shit. But like on the inside is really where you find that certainty. And it's knowing that the outside world is not certain. Like once you come to that conclusion and that fact, like once you fully internalize that there's no which way, however the outside world is going to go, that is going to make you comfortable and like make you feel okay. And there might be times where it makes you feel okay, but not fully. And once you come to that fact, I think that's when you start the path of feeling just genuinely happy to just be alive and being okay and feeling certain and that comfort within yourself.
Yeah, feeling free. I don't like the term happiness as a goal because, you know, all of these classes are, you know, popping up to make you feel happy. But happiness is really occasional byproduct of freedom. Because
occasional byproduct. That's funny.
Happiness exists in contrast to sadness, right? Yeah. So if you're not running away from the sadness, there is no need to chase happiness.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And that's a really good place to be, what you said. That is, you realize that it's impermanent, but you can take part in it. But when you know that it doesn't mean anything, you enjoy the shit out of it because it's the experience right there and, you know, right there and then. Mm-hmm. I look at Trump a little differently. I look at Trump as a psychedelic because, you know, he's brought up a lot of things that people have buried within themselves and covered it with sense of ethics and morality. So
that's good, man.
A lot of people are having a very, very bad trip.
Oh man, that's good. I've never that's so good because it's when you put it that way, because it just brings out, he's dissolving boundaries. He's just bringing stuff out of people, the good or the bad. That's great, man. That's great.
Yeah, he's perfect because he's right now, you know, the kind of thing. It's so funny that when they try to shame him, they're like, you said this 15 years ago. He doesn't even remember or cares, or it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's
he's right here, right now. And I'm amazed by the amount of focus that this guy has because nothing derail him. Nothing.
Yeah, he's Donald Trump, man.
Yeah.
It really, I love that, man. He is a psychedelic.
He is.
You know, psychedelics don't have to be in the form of, you know, a chemical substance. It can be an experience you have, or it can be a person like Donald Trump that, wow, yeah, that's so true.
I'll tell you how I came to that conclusion. I used to do daily live streams, and it was really interesting because in the beginning you start to plan, hey, what am I going to talk about? This is what I'm going to talk about. But then it piles up, especially in this world. So many different things happens that you get to a point that, hey, I'm just going to talk. If you like it, watch. If you don't like it, bye. Mm-hmm. You know, and you become very comfortable with that. And a lot of interesting thoughts start to emerge in a very improvisational kind of a thing. Like, I haven't planned to what I'm going to tell you. You know, I didn't ask for questions or anything like that. And that actually is a very big red flag for me when I select my guests on my podcast, that if you ask for questions, I don't want to have anything to do with you, because it's just what comes as a result of this unknown exchange of perspectives that is very, very interesting. So I came across this news that comedian, what's that woman's name? Some comedian who is totally anti-Trump. And she was talking about how after the election, she got hooked on marijuana and she had to go and talk to a psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember her name, but I can't. Anyways. And she said that as the result of talking with the therapist, what ignited it was Trump for her to go and see a therapist. But what she got into was realizing that a lot of things that Trump is bringing back up has roots in her childhood.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
Yeah. I was like, good for her, because she went back to become an anti-Trumper right away after that episode. But, you know, like, good for her for having the courage to actually saying it. But, you know, people who treat Trump that way, I think it's exactly a path to realizing that it's all coming from within yourself. Because some of these people are like, do you even know yourself why you're so angry? I don't think you do.
No.
You just want to be angry because you think you're doing something.
Yep, and they see a headline on Facebook or something, they just see something that gets them going, and then they go out in the streets.
The comedian name is Chelsea Handler. I just remembered.
Oh, yep, I know her. I've never watched anything by her, but I know who she is.
All of these people used to be good. Like I enjoyed her comedy. Bill Maher, Sarah Silverman. I was very open-minded about all of these people. Bill Maher, I especially really liked, but all of them after Trump is like, they broke. What happened? There are other things you can talk about as well, and besides just hating on this guy 24/7.
Yeah, it's because it gets the views.
But people have stopped caring. That's the funny part of it. They laid down. People have stopped caring about it. It doesn't. I heard it from so many people that they're still going to vote for Biden, but they're like, dude, we're so tired of hearing Trump is bad all day, every day. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, don't watch MSNBC and CNN then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just turn off the TV, man. Just turn off the phone. Just that's what the world needs more of, honestly. Just a little bit of outside time to go within and just shut off the phone. Do you have any kind of like meditation? Like, do you meditate, or how do you explore yourself? Like, what makes you happy?
I don't.
Should I say free, not happy?
Free. Yeah. Well, once you're free, you're always free.
True.
It's a realization, right? And it doesn't require anything or anybody.
Yeah.
Meditation. I used to do Zen and sit with Zazen for many hours, sometimes for days in retreats when I was in Canada. But this is like 9 years ago. I'm not that enthusiastic about routines.
Yeah.
And even though whenever I do meditate, it's awesome. Sometimes I sit in our pool on the ledge and just meditate in water. I find it really interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can meditate. You don't have to sit down and close your eyes and have your hands in a certain way. You can meditate washing dishes.
Yeah, exactly. If you know that, like, that certain, I don't know if you want to say mindset, but like, yeah, that way to just come into being. Yeah, you can do that. Like, Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't meditate supposedly. He just says it's useless, and he just lives. Like his whole life is a meditation. He just lives in the ebb and flow of life. And I'm like, that actually is probably the truth, because I don't.
It is.
Some people get lost in having to have that routine and that meditation thing. And if I don't meditate today, then I'm gonna feel like shit or whatever. And that is like counterproductive to what meditation really is. Like, that's taking you further away from the truth.
Yeah, I mean, the instruction that just try to relax. I mean, have you ever tried to be relaxed? Is like oxymoronic. How can you try to be relaxed?
Yeah, you can't try to relax.
Or try not to think. I'm like, okay, that's another one.
Yeah, that's like, don't think about the pink elephant. Obviously, you're going to think about the pink elephant.
But the thing is, even with like TM, I did TM when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And like, I know, for example, David Lynch is really into it. And a lot of the ideas is coming from that realm. But even that to me is like, why do you have to rely on mantra? You don't need that. You don't need that whatsoever. Because when there is a mantra, you have a middleman, and when there is a middleman, there is an opportunity for corruption. And when there is opportunity for corruptions, humans are always going to be corrupted. That's just part of who we are. There's nothing wrong with it. You just realize that that's who we are, and then operate on that basis. But Eckhart Tolle is funny. You're saying we went to see him in Miami. He was giving a talk, and it was a massive arena. My girlfriend is really into him, and she's a very quick reader. So we went there and we sat down. He came and sat on one chair and just talked for like 2 hours and then left. Mm-hmm. And I told my girlfriend, I was like, I agreed with every single thing he said. Like, it was just spot on. But it was funny because there were people in the crowd all around us who were taking notes of what he was saying. I was like, you just lost the point right here.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true, man.
It's funny. It's funny to see it because, it's this, again, goes back to sense of certainty and sense of trust. that people want to have on something. If there is nothing, this feeling of free falling is not very pleasant for people, because it's happening within the context of ego, right? Which is an illusion itself.
Exactly. You mean free falling toward uncertainty?
Right, you really are not free falling. You just start living, but it's so different. It's like the allegory of Cave by Plato, that there are people sitting in a cave and looking at the shadows that are, by objects that with a fire behind it, but there is a way out of the cave, and somebody climbed out of it, and in the beginning his eyes start to burn because of the sunlight. You're never exposed to it, so in the beginning it hurts you a little, but then you open your eyes and like, oh, holy shit, this is actually what is real.
Yep.
Then you go back and tell other people, and they're like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, they're too busy lost in the shadows.
Like, this is comfortable. What do we need more?
How did you come to these? Okay, so what we're talking about right now is a certain mindset that I identify with people. And I'm like, oh, okay, they get it. I'm like, they kind of have an inkling of what's going on, which is that nobody knows really what's going on. So
yeah,
where do you is this a gradual process, or do you think there was something that in your life that just kind of like, was it a psychedelic experience? Like, what happened so you can come to be and to become the person that you are right now?
So I grew up in very unique kind of circumstances in Iran. I was born in the middle of a war. Iran-Iraq war is the longest war of the 20th century. So
what years was that?
This is like, I was born in 83.
Okay.
So that was the third year of the war, and it went on for 4 more years after that. And just a very different kind of life. My dad wasn't around. He was in the U.S. I loved America because, I knew my dad was in America, and all the good stuff around me was from America, like Disney cartoons and, music and all that. So, I'm a musician by nature that was shaped through a very extraordinary kind of circumstances in life. And then I came across psychedelic very late, relatively speaking, in life. I got high off of marijuana on my 26th birthday in Vancouver, BC. I'd smoked 3 times before that, nothing happened, but that one, hit the spot. And this was July, and then November 1st that year, 2009, I took mushroom for the first time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, you experience that of like, what? This is like, what's happening? And I just continued that path, and I continued it for 10 years as a practice with psychedelic as part of this journey that in the beginning I thought I knew where it was leading and what was happening, but then I didn't know. And then I got to a point I'm like, well, actually, I don't want to know. This is very interesting. And then
want to know?
No, because, there is nothing to know.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we said before. The only thing to know is that there's, nothing. I think Socrates said that. He said, the more I know that I don't know. Or, I paraphrase that, but that's that concept.
I mean, it's part of who we are, again, to have a clear vision of what is happening. And, it's tempting and it's cool to talk about it, but it's the attachment to it. That is the problem, that you're like, well, this is how it's going to be, good and bad and right and wrong. And, I'm good. I'm a good person.
Yeah. Because
that's what it is all about. A lot of people who want to do quote unquote good, they don't really care about the outside world. They just want themselves to see themselves as a good person.
Yeah.
So, I did, a lot of psychedelics, but at the same time, psychedelics is like, you get out of them what you put into them. Yeah. So, I just had really interesting conversations with people, and, I've been very open-minded pretty much all my life. So I watch different movies, listen to different people, and I went to film school to study sound design. And one of the first principles of sound design is layered. Hey, this reality, the sound that you hear around you is layered. So there is a bird, there is like a car in the distance, there's a wind, and there is like a worker. And you can recreate an environment. And this was really interesting to me while I was experiencing mushroom, how this layered nature of reality is resonating with me. And that was a very clear point of beginning of something that I don't even know, but it led to creation of Agology, which is a philosophical framework. It's not a religion or anything like that. And again, that came to me as a revelation, because I'm still, from time to time think about parts of it that came to me that it's on the website. I think about it and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And I like realize something new about it, which is really, it's interesting.
Yeah, I've actually read that, your Agologist website, and I love the symbol, first of all, with the caduceus or the helix, and then was it like 2 arrows and there's something else. If you had that on a shirt, I would wear it.
Oh, awesome. Good to know. I'll send you an email. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Well, that came to me, that entire symbol, during my first real NN-DMT experience.
Oh, yeah?
It was really insane. I went through that circle on the top of it to break through to the other side.
So you're saying that you experienced that symbol in yourself?
It's very difficult to put it in words. That's an interesting way to say it. But yes, I've experienced the symbol on the way to the other side. Second DMT experience, because the first time I didn't take much. It was cool, the imagery, but the second one I took a little too much.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't you didn't get anything from it?
The second time I was blown away. The first time I remember seeing, like, when the sky is cloudy and then there is an opening in the cloud, you see a huge ray of light, like sunlight. I saw like 60 of them on our ceiling in our bedroom during the first time. I was like, that's really awesome. But then the second time, it was just like full on. This is a blast like I've never experienced before.
I've never done DMT. I just have a lot of experience with high doses of mushrooms and high doses of cannabis. And like I do yoga and like Kundalini yoga, but I've never experienced. I've read and listened to so many people, and I love how most of their experiences of DMT experiences, it's all very similar, which is very peculiar to me. Like how it's just like, there's certain like stages, it seems like, and a lot of, most people say it's really, you can't talk about it. It's not really something that you can talk about.
Yeah.
But what do you think all right. So, cause you always come back to the DMT, you go into the trip and you come back. What do you think did you get anything from DMT, or is there anything that you changed you as a person in this, non-DMT world?
Yeah, that is a good question. Well, first of all, there are two different kinds. One has more vivid visuals. The other is just very strange. That's the Bufo one. Do you know the different kinds? Yes, I've done both of them.
I know there's one with the toad.
Yes.
Like Tyson talks about. And then I know there's another one that is in, I don't know. Yeah, you can describe it probably better than I can.
So NN-DMT is synthetic, basically.
Okay.
And that's the one that you need 3 hits to get to the place. But by the second hit, you can't even comprehend the thought of taking another one. It's so fucking intense.
Wow.
But you do the third one and it's all good.
Yeah.
But with Bufo, I'd done Bufo, I think 4 or 5 times. But the time that it was just unbelievable, I actually did it with Mike Tyson's facilitator.
Really? Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, who's on Mike Tyson's first episode of his podcast, Hotboxing.
How did you manage that?
I just know some people here who have done it with him, and he was occasionally coming to the U.S. And yeah, we just went to West Palm Beach, and one hit, and it was 100 milligram, and one hit. He said, inhale for 8 seconds, keep it for 8 seconds, and then exhale. But I always do 11-11.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to this space completely out of my body.
Yeah.
and there is no point to even try to describe it in words. Words do not belong there.
Yeah.
But to me, that was a really interesting experience of the point of nothingness.
Wow. As in, you feel emptiness? Like, so from that experience, you realized the point of nothingness?
Yes, because if you think about it, most of the atoms of our body, it's empty space.
Yeah.
When you look at the sky, you see all the stars, but most of what you see is just black. Basically, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So nothingness is where everything emerges from. But it's just that we don't have a very good definition for nothingness. So after that, I actually started looking for different definitions, like how people have defined nothingness. And surprisingly, maybe it's not surprising, but there aren't that many different definitions. But the quantum physics one is interesting that they're talking about. That is basically the fabric of universe, that contains dark matter and dark energy.
Yeah, isn't that like 95% of the universe?
Yeah, and so everything else, basically.
Yeah.
So, you never know. And I actually told a friend of mine who had the same experience, but did not go well for him. He took a little too much, got a little greedy.
Oh, yeah.
But I also told him, this is, I think, what happens when you die.
I've heard that so many times from people.
Yeah, not with NNDMT, I had that feeling, but with the Bufo, when I took the 100 milligram. And by the way, I'm not advocating anybody does anything. Know where you are mentally, and my only recommendation with anything psychedelic related is that start small, because you can always add.
Exactly, you can't take it away.
No, it's not a competition. You're not impressing anybody, and just have a brain. Basically,
be smart about it. Exactly.
Yeah, but with Bufo, when I exhaled, everything particleized basically and start falling apart, and I see the tunnel of light, and then you're in the space.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Bufo is the one from the natural one, like from a toad?
From the toad, yeah.
Okay.
5
okay.
Neo, yeah.
Gotcha. And that's the one that you said you felt like this is the afterlife?
I don't know about afterlife, but this is what happens when you die.
And I've heard from people say it's like a more beautiful world, right?
Well, again, beauty, that's subjective,
Yeah, there's no words to put on it, right? It's just a different world.
But I would use the term familiar, which is really strange, because it's so alien, but it's familiar.
And we're using words that don't quite grasp that world, right?
The words don't belong there. Using words as the method of communication is the best we got so far, but it's not a very efficient one. That we are changing electrical signals into air pressured vowel symbols.
Yeah, using our tongue of some flap of our skin to just...
Yeah, because that's what it is. It's a symbol. It's like an emoji, but it's an audible emoji, sonic emojis.
Yeah, it's all symbols, man, and all those symbols are taking us further away from the truth. Everything. Who was Freud's counterpart? Like the guy he worked with. Why can't I think of his name right now? But he has a book. It's called Man and His Symbols. Why can't I think of the guy's name right now? Whatever. But he has the Man and His Symbols, and it's pretty much about how everything is
Man and the Symbols.
Man and His Symbols.
And his symbols.
Yeah, I think that's how it goes. It's
I'm just Googling.
Yeah, it's all about like how everything is just a symbol, and it is taking us.
Carl Jung. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't think of his name.
Right,
yeah,
that's
Carl
okay.
Jung.
Well, Carl Jung is another one of those people who totally got it.
Yeah. 100%. That dude, his books are really intense. Like you have to really pay attention to know like what this guy's getting at. Extraordinary for his time. But it's pretty much, all of these religions, all of these belief systems they're just symbols. They're just showing us something. They're trying to at least show us the truth, but people get lost in those symbols. And you know, they wage war over the symbols, or they just do crazy things over the symbols, when it's so goes against what that, because I believe that every religion has truth in it, like at its core, where it came from. They all came from, I think personally, they came from psychedelic experiences or psychedelic mindsets, and they all have that truth, but you can't express the truth, like, you know, that truth, you can't express that in any which way, like in any image, with any word, with any book. It'll just point you in the direction, but it's not what it actually is. Like, what it actually is a feeling. It's a certain experience, I guess, or circumstance of consciousness, I guess, if you want to call it. And the more we get lost in the symbols, the further away it takes us from what we are, what the hell is actually going on.
Yeah, I mean, the nature of it is decentralized. To make it into a centralized way of understanding, Kapil Gupta call it prescriptions. Has no point in it, basically. And if you think about it, like, Christianity hasn't got much to do with Jesus. Because
it's a saying, they killed the last Christian 2,000 years ago.
I mean, he didn't write the Bible. And he's the guy that we know of his childhood. Then we don't know what happened until he's like 30. Yeah. Right. So some people say that he could be a Buddhist monk, that he, you know, and there is a tomb of Jesus in Kashmir that, with his footprints, they believe that he died there.
Wow.
But the thing is, when you read about early Christian history, up to the point where Emperor Constantine of Rome supposedly became Catholic and merged church and state, Catholic Church with the Roman Empire for extended power. Before that, there was a very different kind of a meaning of what this man has taught. You know, again, was he real? Was he not? John Allegro believed that he was a mushroom. He was a psychedelic mushroom called Jesus. It doesn't matter, because what matters is the spirit of what he's teaching, and how that has been interpreted in such a weird and strange and twisted way that has led to Catholic priests being known as child molesters.
It's insanity.
Right? Well, it's also karma. That, hey, don't mess with this thing, dude. Like, he's actually talking about something really important. To make this resurrection about physical death and then you bringing back physically, is just to have a middleman. So you can go and pray to that person. And for many, many, many centuries, it was only priests who could read the Latin text of Bible. So it goes back again to certainty and the importance of information at the core of everything. But no, I don't think Jesus was talking about most of what the church is talking about whatsoever. That's why I'm kind of excited about this re-emergence of a modern Christianity as a very viable alternative of creating a moral compass, to create that sense of certainty that humanity seems to, as a civilization, totally needs it. Yeah. You know, because if you don't have it, you create your own.
Yeah. And that can be scary. We've known a few people in history that have done that.
Oh, absolutely. It's happening right now, if you look at it. So, you know, we're learning a lot exactly because of these hard times that we're going through. And if you think about it that way, you're not actually going to suffer it as much, because everything is a learning opportunity. And then you accept how things are and act accordingly instead of wishing them if they were somewhere, you know, some other way.
Yeah, exactly, man. When you getting back to what we talked about, like, you know, you said there is no such thing as good and bad. You don't get lost in the good and bad. It's just learning. And that's how I see my
context. Life. That's the thing. I think that's important to realize. You can create a context and then assess elements of that context and say good and bad, right and wrong. Absolutely. Yeah. But objectively speaking, if you say that a baby is born and is kept isolated from all cultures and religions and values and everything, when that kid, first of all, how are you going to communicate with that kid? To know what is the sense of self for a kid that hasn't been exposed to human constructs, because that's what it is. But humans need it. And it's not that bad. It's just that you get hooked in it by people who also have no idea what's happening. They think that this is it. You know, you just grow up, we teach you values, and then you go to school, and then you get a job, get married, and then have grandchildren, children and die.
Yeah.
But probably you're going to have one hell of a time in that last breath that you're taking because you didn't realize what life is all about. And at that moment you will. And you're exactly the equivalent of the person who has taken a little too much DMT and is going through a rough patch. Eventually it'll be fine. You'll find that peace. Everybody find that peace and the truth. It's just that some people will not get to that point until their very last breath. And there is no reason to go through all that suffering by not acknowledging the truth.
Wow. That's awesome, man. That's so true. J. Cole, you know J. Cole, the rapper?
Yeah.
He has one of his lyrics is my only fear is a regret-filled coffin. And that's pretty much sums up what you just said. Like there's some people a lot of people who will have coffins filled with regret. So do you think on your last breath, I know the story of before you die, your brain elicits mass amounts of DMT. You think that actually is a thing?
Supposedly. And it's funny. The gentleman I was talking to about the simulations, he was talking about how life is a video game. And when you're about to leave it, you see all of your life, supposedly like a movie going in front of your face because it's been stored somewhere in some database. It's really funny if you think it within the context of simulation. It totally makes sense because Buddhists are actually talking about the same thing with respect to karma, that there is no soul, there is no you. There is just a bag of karma, which karma to me is just energy.
Yeah.
That is coming from you, and energy cannot cease to exist. Whatever energy that is being produced will remain forever until it run out of steam, basically. Mm-hmm. So very consistent with certain aspect of Buddhism and very consistent with certain way of looking at simulation theory. But leaving it to the last breath, to realizing it. But again, if you don't know the option exists, that's how you live your life. You're like, well, you just have to suffer. Because that really what it goes back to, that why do you have to suffer? You're suffering because you're aiming for something.
Yeah.
Suffering is the absence of success towards that path. If the paths don't exist, you're not going to suffer. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is how it is. It's that you've decided to, it's like playing poker. You have certain kind of cards. You learn how to play them. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The only way that you will never lose is if you will never win. You can't just sit on the side and like, hey man, I'm having a great time watching these people playing poker. And I have $20, maybe I'll play that sometime too, but I'm fine with it. If I win, I'm fine with it if I lose, because I'm not part of the game.
Just don't play the game. Don't get involved.
That's the thing. There is no instruction for people to get there because each of us having our own unique experience. So there are many different paths. They all lead to the same ocean. Ocean refuses no river. But just because I'm going that way doesn't mean that you have to go that way with me. So the best anybody can do is just to not listen, but hear everybody, but listen to very few people, only if it resonates with you. But even then, don't take it as a rule or as some kind of instruction. See what you can learn from a bigger pattern that has given rise to that realization. It goes back to the wave and the ocean. So it's a wave, but the wave is an expression of an ocean, and the next time wave is going to be different.
Wow, man. Just go with the flow, just like a wave. Just be your own wave.
Just be, man.
just go with the flow. That's what we all need to get to, man. It's tough. I mean, do you envision a world in the future where everybody has that mindset, where we are all just, because I talked to somebody else before and I was like, I asked that question. He said, no, this world wouldn't be the same if everybody was enlightened. I don't know if you want to say enlightened or awakened or to that fact of, because we need that contrast to know that we are an individual, like, in this world. If everybody was, if everybody at this point, like, what if tomorrow was snap my fingers and everybody just let go and had that mindset? Would this world work? Like, would it?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, because most people talk about the revolution. They're not talking about the day after the revolution.
Yeah, the day after the revolution. That's great. That sounds like a book.
Yeah, like what's going to happen then? The day after the revolution. I think everyone is born enlightened, because what is the meaning of enlightenment? To realize that you are the expression of a bigger thing, expression of the divine.
Yeah, that's summing it up.
That's it. That's
good.
But it's so simple that most people will ignore it. And it's so simple that when you get it, you just laugh, because I'm like, what?
Yep, the cosmic joke.
So a kid knows that, the kid will play in a sandbox for hours without having any goal or without having any agenda. He just likes playing in the sandbox. So it's the human construct that has been inevitably built and led to some really awesome stuff that you get stuck into it, and it's no one's fault. Some people kind of realize it, because I disagree that you can run the machine if you understand how exactly it works. If you know how exactly it works, it's not interesting to you to want to operate it, Yeah. So the operator cannot be an enlightened being, because you have an agenda, and you better have an agenda. Because if you're operating a plane, nobody cares how enlightened you are. They care about, landing safely at their destination.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also important to realize that pilot can have a heart attack right there and then, and you can die right now.
Yeah.
How does that sound? Are you okay with that? And, Alan Watts talked about how a lot of Tibetan Buddhist monks, they have human skulls on their desk, because that really is the most important projection you can have to realize. And it's a luxury that we have, that, hey, one day, and that day can be right now. I'm going to die. Yeah. How am I feeling about that? Is there something I want to do before dying? And then you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. But then the deeper way of looking at it is that what's the reason that I want to do that thing? So this why and why not, and brutal honesty with self, is the only way forward. However you are going to get to a place that you want to get to, that if there is a place you want to get to, you're probably not going to get to it. Because it's not solid, it's fluid, and it's uncertain, and it's ever evolving.
Yep. Ever changing.
Yeah. Impermanence.
That's a powerful image to have. The skull on the desk. I might have to do that. That's so powerful because when you come to the truth of impermanence, it's when you fully fathom that this moment is precious, and everything that is in your life is that happens in your life is precious. It's just the fleeting moment. It's just a dream. Then you act accordingly. When most people, it seems as though everyone knows they're going to die, but people don't like to think about it. And I don't like to think about it, but it's good to have a barometer on and base your decisions in your life upon that, in a way, because it's as much as you want to avoid dying, even though I don't think it's a bad thing, as much as you want to avoid it, it's a truth. Everything is impermanent, and you can't hide from the truth. But I think the entire world is so scared and hiding from the truth. And if it's true what they say, that we come from the source, that kids kind of know about, and when we die in the DMT realm, and that's where we come from, maybe that's where we're going back. Like, why is it such a bad thing? And you said it's actually a good thing, right? It's like a blessing in a way. Like our own demise is like actually good. Like that none of this really matters. And I believe that. Like, I believe impermanence is a blessing. It is grace, man. It is.
I mean, it is what it is.
It's the truth.
Yeah, if you take it as good or bad, it is what it is. And, the hierarchy, I like to sometimes someone ask, oh, how do I make sense out of things that are happening? And it goes with everything. The hierarchy is that nature is at the core of it. And then there is technology and science. And then there is human intention and authority. So religion, for example, comes from human intention and authority. So nature will always trump human intention and authority. Nature doesn't give a damn what kind of a meaning you're looking for or whatever. But science and technology provide us with different tools to manipulate the ways of nature. And that's the very definition of evolution, survival of the fittest. Fittest is not the strongest, it's the most adaptable, it's the most flexible. So it is what it is. And, it's not a very, I guess, kind way to go and tell someone who's suffering, like, dude, it is what it is. Just get over it.
Yeah.
But what else can you do other than providing further illusions for people who are suffering because of their illusions?
What else can you do? What do you mean? So
what else can you do other than telling them straight up that, dude, it is what it is? Now, I'm not suggesting that doing that, but I'm saying people who are selling others illusions to rid them from their suffering that is caused by their own illusions.
I see.
They just want to make a profit out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But it's not a solution. You're not going to be happier. You're just going to depend on 5 more things instead of like 4.
Yeah, that's so true, dude. How it's just illusion after illusion after illusion.
Which is fine. We dream and we enjoy dreaming, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's the definition of an illusion. But it's that if you wake up and feel really depressed for the rest of the day because you want to be in the dream world, then you're very attached to it. And that is a problem. The problem is not with the illusion. The problem is with your sense of certainty and putting your trust in it, because it is all about trust, Hey, this is the process that we trust. This is the way that we trust. This is, I trust in this government and they will make everything okay. Well, maybe not, no one knows. And there are people smarter than you who know that you don't know, but all you're looking for is trust. So that's what they're going to sell you. So that illusion is not even only an illusion. It's an illusion that is tailored for your need. And that describes the business model of social media platforms.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's 100%. Whew. It just comes down to attachment. Attachment, any kind of attachment is going to lead you to suffering, man.
Look, the way I look at life is that consciousness and divine and God and whatever you want to call it, I see it as internet and I see us as computers or devices. Each of these devices could be connected to the same kind of a network, but have different experiences. I have opened up, me and you are both connected to internet, but I have different browsers open on my computer than you do.
Yep.
But after the computer is dead and gone and destroyed, internet hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Internet's still there until a next device get connected to it.
Yeah. So the internet is consciousness.
It could be. Consciousness could be something like internet. The mechanism of it could work like an internet. Definitely is decentralized.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I see that as well, is that we are just this one band of consciousness experiencing itself in an infinite amount of ways. And that's Brahman. Experiencing itself is Atman. And it's an infinite band of just experience, just consciousness itself into this little band of a human being, into this expression of that creative divine energy. And because of that, there's not really a concept of dying so much as the one that we like. Yeah, my body's gonna die, my consciousness will die, but consciousness itself in the internet of the universe won't die, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. So. I agree with that, and I think we are experiencing it because of our brain working like a computer. It's like one of the devices. Mm-hmm. So, well, some people disagree with that. Some people think consciousness is the product of your brain processing.
Yes.
I disagree with that, but again, that doesn't matter because the only way to find out about that is when we'll be able to reverse engineer human brain, which is, who knows if we can do it, because we are still talking about a binary state without even considering that, hey, the reality could be quantum, probably is quantum.
Yeah, which is like, aren't the rules of physics in quantum physics like just completely so alien to regular physics?
Well, so binary, in the context of computation, binary it's either 1 or 0.
Yeah.
In quantum computing, is 1, 0, or both of them at the same time.
Oh.
So the quantum states, I don't know if you're familiar with Schrodinger's cat, that you have this cat in a box with a bottle of poison and a hammer. Mm-hmm. And the box is closed. You can't see the cat. So the cat is alive and dead until you open the box, which is very consistent with quantum physics when they're talking about measurement problem, that electrons behave like marbles when you're observing them, but when you're not looking at them or measuring them, they behave like waves, like they're everywhere. But when measuring them, they're at this specific kind of spot.
Yeah, so because the act of measuring actually changes the locality of it, the position, the behavior of it. So yeah, that's like is our brains just the act of measuring, and just by simply experiencing whatever, this whatever's going on, is that actually changing the fabric of our reality at a quantum level?
I think it's like a tuner,
a guitar tuner.
Well, like a radio tuner.
Oh, like tuned to a certain frequency, yeah.
Yeah, when you're listening to, or when you're watching like a TV channel, it doesn't mean that the rest of TV channels don't exist. It's just that you tune to a specific. So it's the same thing with like if we really want to be committed to the rules that energy cannot be destroyed, any amount of energy that will exist indefinitely, and that everything is energy. Therefore, when you think about something, that thing is as real as the scenario that you're experiencing, but it could happen in another dimension that is slightly different than our dimension. All of these are possibilities, So to settle, this is actually another topic I've been talking about lately on podcasts with a bunch of people, academics, that all of our institutions, again, if you can be corrupted, most likely you will be corrupted. The money that goes to research and, epistemology, to learn about knowledge, to gather knowledge, the money that is dedicated to that is all driven by self-interest and politics. For example, in physics, for decades, the only thing you could have get grants for and study with full funding and support was string theory. Yeah. So anything else that was introduced as an alternative to string theory, it was just tossed because it was institutional interest for string theory to be true.
Wow.
So that actually hits right at the spot of this illusion that you can't be like, hey, how did the world begin? Big Bang. Okay. What happened before Big Bang? I don't know. Well, then why not God, for example? Why not Christianity? If you don't know about that? Well, because this professor and that professor and that professor told me. But that has nothing to do with the truth.
Yeah, but those professors were essentially paid off by institutions.
They're part of the system. A lot of them are.
That's why people say science is just like another religion, because there's other interests.
It certainly could be if it's corrupted, and because science, the beauty of it is that it is a system to flow through uncertainty, and it's never ending. So, we still call it theory of gravity, for example. We know it's not a theory. You can jump off the window and you will most definitely hit the ground.
Yeah.
But it's a theory because sometimes someone can come up with it and change it for whatever reason. Our understanding of it could be changed. Mm-hmm. But the sense of certainty that is required to make profit out of these things is exactly what makes science into a religion, that you can't even question it. And what's even crazier about it is that some of the supposed scientific evidence that then is being used by politicians in order to raise your taxes.
Oh man, yeah, it's all an illusion.
Yeah, but these people are losing control because of open discourse. And this is a process because think about it, until maybe 150 years ago, a little maybe more than that, the only mode of communication for people was just, face to face, mouth to mouth, send someone a letter. But then newspapers came around, and then radio channels, and then TV. But even then, they were so limited that they could be manipulated by a bigger structure. So in the 90s, it didn't really matter what channel you watch or who won the election. You would have the experience in different kind of a way, but within the same kind of a construct that has been built for you by very certain number of people who were, whose interest was in that certainty, in that illusion. But internet changed all of that. Like, we're not going back.
No way. The key is to keep a decentralized internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Decentralization is the key. Whether it's going to be blockchain or it's going to be something else, it goes back to trust. You don't require to trust anybody, any centralized structure of authority. But then you realize when you go down that path, why not decentralizing governance altogether? And, interesting times ahead, man. Interesting times ahead, because all of this is not only philosophical anymore. You have a practical way of implementing alternative systems.
Yeah.
And say
I think it's going to be blockchain.
Could be. Yeah. Because we don't know how that's going to work when there is quantum computing, for example.
Yeah. I heard that quantum computing is not really it's going to make it obsolete, like blockchain.
Yeah. But there will be something else.
Yeah.
Because decentralization is not a technology, it's a philosophy that is being materialized through blockchain. But it doesn't mean that that's the only protocol that decentralization will depend on.
Yeah, that's true. I think we are slowly, this is the beginning. I like to say that this is humanity's puberty, within the last few years. This is the beginning of us coming into that true being of who we should be, just essentially decentralized, and and going back to trust, and actually having trust in our systems, and not having to worry about the folly of humans, of their own self-interests, and building these systems around our technology that enable us to have a better world. And it could be through blockchain, and it could be through quantum computing. Who knows? Nobody knows where we're going, man. It's crazy.
And I think the biggest mistake is try to make sense out of it. Exactly. And hold on to it. You can try to make sense out of it. I can't tell you what's happening with respect to election and all that. I'm like, oh, it makes sense, but that can change tomorrow.
Yeah.
And even then, even if it doesn't change in grand scheme of things, shit just happened. And if you're ready, you go with it. If you're not ready, you're going to sink. Mm-hmm. It's not about good and bad. It's about how the system works. The evolution that has been going on since the very beginning of life. We have our own evolution that we are going through individually, but also in different kind of groups. Your family has a different kind of evolution than your society does. Your society that has a different kind of evolution than your continent does. Your continent has a different kind of evolution that global evolution has. Yeah. Right. So again, the point of alignment, which I'm very convinced that if there is going to be a point of alignment, it's going to be an involuntary one. It's not that everybody have to opt into it. It's something that is beyond, again, human intention and authority. Kardashev scale, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
So Kardashev scale is basically the scale for different types of civilization. And it talks about that type 1 civilization is a planetary civilization that you have.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, access and control over all elements of your planet. And then the second one is galactic. The third one. Anyways, the point is that level by level, you take control of your resources. We're not even type 1.
Yeah.
Right? We're moving towards that, but a lot of the process is being corrupted by different humans, different politicians, different corporate people. But again, that is part of humanity. We can say it's bad and we should be doing that thing. But again, if you have the opportunity to be corrupted, most likely you will be corrupted.
Exactly, man. It's unfortunate. It's the unfortunate truth of humans, because we are flawed beings.
Fallen angels, man.
Yeah. Yeah. As much as we think we are these I don't know, we're just apes that wear clothes at the end of the day, and just talk and use these obsolete. I mean, I guess it's becoming obsolete way of communicating through our mouth noises. But at the end of the day, like I said, we're just apes with guns. Like, getting back to it, we're just monkeys with guns, man. And you can either come to that fact and just go with the flow and just be a ripple in the ocean and realize that you are a ripple in this entire ocean, or you can resist it and resist the tide and resist the waves. But it just starts with your mindset, and that's why I started this whole thing, man. It's just like, I want to talk to certain people that have that mindset and explore what that is, and hopefully other people will vibe with it, and if they don't, they don't. That's fine. But it's a fun experience, and it's cool to connect with people like you, man, that kind of, I don't know if you'll say know what's going on, because like we said, nobody knows what's going on, but you have just a certain viewpoint of life, like I titled the podcast, like the conscious perspective of what's going on. You're aware that it's just like, this is craziness. And yeah, I mean, I think we can wrap this thing up, man. I feel like we could talk all day. We've covered so much. I don't even remember what we talked about, but I thank you for coming on, Agah Bahari. And this was an amazing conversation. I gotta really go to the bathroom, and I'm kind of tired, so that's why.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we wrap it up?
Just want to ask. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy. Do you, and go within. Shut your phone off and just go outside for a little bit. And yeah, that's it, man. We're all gonna be okay. It's all going to be cool.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
We'll be fine. Agah Bahari, the Agologist, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.